of the Council's Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee. As you can see, the meeting's been held remotely. I know that will greatly disappoint Councillor Wilson, but there are particular reasons for it. Well, I did notice, Councillor Wilson, you weren't able to attend in person the Education and Communities Committee the other day, and Councillor Clockerty was sitting lonely in the council chamber all himself.
So, I go to the meetings I like.
Okay, you're disturbing me reading out this official statement that I have to read out. So the meeting will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast, available from the council's website. The council is the data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil their public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council's published policies, available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. So with that, we move on to item 1, which is apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. Colin?
Convener, we have an apology from Councillor J. McElhaney to be substituted by Councillor C. McElhaney. I see that all members are present. Are there any declarations of interest? None?
Okay, so you're happy to dispense with a roll call, Colin, that you can see everybody's here?
Yep.
Okay, thanks for that. So, and welcome, Councillor Chris McElhaney. So, item 2 on our agenda is the allocation of the COVID economic recovery funding. Alan?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this report is to seek the subcommittee's approval for the allocation of the council's share of £80 million that was announced by the Scottish Government to aid COVID economic recovery. I can confirm that the council's allocation has now been formally confirmed at 1.25 million, not 1.23 million, which is in the report. The report seeks the members' approval for the use of this allocation, and paragraph 2.2 advises of the principles that the Scottish Government have set out regarding the use, whilst 2.3 give the CMT proposal for consideration by the subcommittee today. In addition, the subcommittee are asked to consider 2 further proposals to support vulnerable members of our community by doubling the £75 heating support payment to eligible over 70s, £150, and maintaining the 40% crisis grant uplift introduced during COVID and continue that for the remainder of 2022-23. Both those items will be funded from the anti-poverty revenue budget and the anti-poverty reserve. Could I just also highlight that in the recommendations in 3.3, on the basis I'm no good with figures, the figure that says 630 should be £730,000 for support for businesses, which is £170,000. The proposal is to continue free parking for 6 months in the council's pay and display car parks, and £560,000 to be delegated to the Interim Director, Environment and Regeneration, on the basis that he will report back on the use of that funding to the Environment and Regeneration Committee. I and relevant officers are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Okay, Chris McElhaney, you want to come in?
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. I think the report, I guess, broadly is ensuring maybe the direction members would want to go. So I'm just looking for a wee bit of further clarity on discretionary payments. I don't know about other councils, but with the advertisement of the council tax reduction payment and the payment to people in bands 80D, there has been quite a lot of people that are in upper bands that have been getting in touch saying, well, they are in upper bands, but they are struggling as well with, certainly with the fuel costs, families, everything's gone up. So is there scope that any of this funding would allow discretionary funding to be awarded to households in bands above band D that maybe find themselves in fuel poverty, hardship, or struggling with the cost of living crisis, and what would be the mechanism for that to be allocated, would be the first point. The second point would be in terms of the recommendation for the additional £50. Obviously, I welcome that. I think that there was broad consensus across the council that people wanted to see this go up as high as possible. So, just for a point of clarity, would that £50 be added to the £300 as it says in the notification that's going out to members of the public at the moment, saying they'll be written to at the end of this month about the £300 payment? Would that just then be the case that that letter would notify that this would be a £350 payment, or would this require a separate communication with members of the public? And the third point's just in regards to the £170,000 on free parking. Obviously, I know it's a controversial subject. I've just wondered though, the £170,000 perhaps could be better targeted, to help people put money in their pockets. Would there be a workable solution that, sort of people that need to park in the town all day because they're working? Obviously, is there a potential that we can keep that free, but have charging in place for people that just wish to come and stay for 4 hours or whatever? I know that was getting looked in at the past, and it's probably maybe it'll be too difficult at such a short notice. But I just think it's a lot of money that could maybe be better put to use as opposed to just deferring the parking payments for another period. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, Alan, you want to comment, and maybe Stuart wants to come in as well.
Thank you. Just taking them in order. I imagine there'd be a lot of complexity about having just simply a discretionary payment scheme. Clearly, the council, as part of its budget and as part of the recommendations here, are targeting the funding to those who are assessed to be in most financial need, and that is measured via the council tax reduction, which is an accepted method of measuring individuals' financial circumstances. If you stray beyond that, it becomes more complicated, a lot more complicated, weighing up one application against another, and the resources to do that, I'd imagine, would be significant. If the council was approached by any individual who wasn't in receipt of council tax reduction, who was struggling with their finances, obviously we would put them towards the money advice and the welfare rights team to ensure that individuals are getting all the supports that they're entitled to. The Scottish Government £150 scheme was obviously a far broader scheme at £150 for bands A to D, so you can get a sense that the numbers would significantly expand, and as a result the impact would be diluted. So, I mean, these are matters for members to consider. I'm just saying, from an officer perspective, it would not be an exact science targeting the money, and it could delay funding, and we'd need to identify where that funding was coming from. So those things. As far as the three,
can we maybe stop
Sure.
there? I know Councillor McElhenney wants to come in a wee second, but can you just clarify that anybody living in property bands E upwards can apply for council tax reduction, and depending on their income they can receive council tax reduction, and that anybody living in those bands equally could apply for a crisis grant as well, depending again on their financial circumstances?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, absolutely. And the council tax reduction, there are individuals in receipt of council tax reduction in every band that we've got in the council. Not big numbers, obviously, in band G and H, but there are some. And so everyone who is assessed to be financially entitled and has applied for council tax reduction will get support. Obviously, if individuals feel that they are entitled to council tax reduction and they haven't applied, I would strongly encourage them to apply.
Okay, Krista, you want to come back in on council tax reduction?
Yeah, it was just, thanks, Convener. Thanks, Mr. Puckering. Yeah, it was just on the final point you had made, Alan. So, obviously, reflecting back to COVID, there was a upsurge in people that were eligible for council tax reduction and then applied and received it. So, with the pressures that people are on now, is there a hard cut-off date for you only get the grant if you were in receipt of council tax reduction on X date, or say over the next coming weeks or month, you end up, you need council tax reduction because of whatever impact there's been on your earnings.
Anybody who was entitled at the 24th of February will receive this support. So A, if you were in receipt of it at the 24th of February, or B, if you apply late, and obviously they can't apply too late because there's a cut-off date for when applications would come in, but if they applied in the next few weeks and they were entitled, and that entitlement could be backdated to the 24th of February based on the evidence that was provided, then they would get the grant as well, if you see what I mean. So it's been entitled as at the 24th of February, not necessarily in receipt at the 24th of February, but I would encourage anybody who feels they are entitled and hasn't put an application in for CTR to apply as soon as possible.
Irrespective of whether people receive the grant, Alan, they should be applying for council tax reduction if they basically feel that they're struggling to pay their council tax, etc.
Yes, because in some cases it can be worth a lot more than the £350 or the £500 that we're talking about here.
Okay, do you want to deal with the other points, Alan?
Yes, sorry. The £300 to 350 exactly. That's probably the primary meeting. One of the two reasons that we're meeting today, and thank you members for agreeing to the meeting at this point in time, is so when we send the correspondence out, we're talking about £350, not £300, just to make it as easy as possible for individuals and to streamline the bureaucratic process from the councils. So yes, single letter, £350. And we'd be hoping to make the first payments by the end of April to those who we already have the bank details of. Those for which we don't, and we'll have to gather them, will take a wee bit longer. And the final point I think was on parking. Clearly, I'll pass over to Stuart, but the point I would highlight is this funding is ostensibly from the is to help with COVID economic recovery. So the idea is that it's meant to, one of the three strands is to encourage people to use the local shops, and therefore the target to allow free parking to people who come into Inverclyde or shop in Greenock or Port Glasgow or Gourock and just want to park up for 2 or 3 hours. The proposal is that from Stuart and the corporate management team is we don't want the £2 charge to put people off. So that's it's less of a support for people. It's meant to be less of a support for people who come in and work in the town centres. It's more to be encouraging people to come in and shop in the town centres. But Stuart can add to that.
Stuart, you want to come in?
Through you, convener, the only thing I'd add is it would be difficult to differentiate between full-day visitors and short-term visitors.
Okay, Ronnie, Councillor Alfield.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, quite happy with the recommendations. Just one small point from me, and it's on 5.2 regarding the business support grant initiatives. It kind of strikes me that £5,000 may be a bit on the low side for some of the incentives and some of the reasons that people may apply for that support grant. And I just wondered if we could make the maximum grant 10,000 rather than 5,000. Stressing, of course, that it would be a maximum payout, but it just strikes me that that £5,000, for workforce development, business development, equipment, infrastructure seems to be a bit on the low side, and I just wondered how people felt about that. And I guess the endorsement of that one would also be how do we propose to roll that out? How will we administer that? And will it be an application form? It will be, how will people apply for it, or businesses apply for it, or could we in fact kind of run it out through the regeneration forum? So it's just a one or two questions, Stephen. Thanks.
Okay, Stuart.
Through you, convener, the individual interventions, Councillor Alfield, would be £5,000, but there's nothing to stop a business having multiple interventions. So there is opportunity for us to support a business through a number of of the interventions which are listed. It's very much based on need. It's about stimulating economy, our economic activity, and it would be my intention that it would be rolled out through the economic development team through an application process.
Okay, that's fine. As long as you know, businesses are not restricted to making one application if they have a need, if you like, to make one or two or maybe even other more than that applications, then I'm happy with that. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Suppose the issue is, Ronnie, but if particular businesses get multiple grants of £5,000, then in theory less businesses would be supported. So there's always a balance.
No, I understand that, and that was in the back of my mind, to be honest, Stephen, at the time. But I did think that £5,000 was a bit low. But you know, if we've taken the inhibitor off of that in terms of a business being able to maybe apply a couple of times, then I'm okay with that. Thanks.
Okay, David, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, excuse me, I got my iron brew got stuck in my throat. I frequently over the last 15 years get complaints from taxpayers. Quite often it's families where both are working, and I get all the time that we never get anything. It all goes to the low paid and those who have nothing. And I think this is another example here. I think the amount being used here on the council tax is too big a proportion of something that's for economic recovery. But that seems to be the majority feeling, and it has been with the council over my 15 years. But I really got to say that the money over 15 years that we've used to try and alleviate poverty has made absolutely no difference to our SIMD, our Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation data zones. They have not improved over the last 15 years. So I don't think it's necessarily money that makes a difference, it's jobs. And I don't see enough in this to encourage jobs. That being the case, where I really do have a problem, and I would move against it, is 170,000 towards free parking. Mr. Puckrin said it would encourage the shops. The way you encourage the shops here is by getting rid of the DIS system in the centre and by cutting down on the activity of our traffic wardens. We had last Saturday a busy day in Kilmacombe with the farmers market, and who descends but the traffic wardens? There's complete anger throughout the village. A busy day, people getting tickets who have been somewhere for 15 minutes where they shouldn't be. And I think the 170,000 also. So I would do something about our traffic wardens and with our DIS system, because I've had visitors come to see me who have got parking tickets at West Blackhall Street who didn't know they had a disc in their window. One tried to find a disc and they couldn't find a disc in any of the shops. So I think we should look at that, but equally, I think the 170,000 will mainly be spent on our employees getting free parking. And I don't think we should be using it for that. Convener, thank you for that rant.
Okay, you'll be pleased to know, Councillor Wilson, that this subcommittee really doesn't have any jurisdiction in the field of the parking discs or parking regulations, right? And in terms of the £50 not being an economic stimulus, actually putting £50 or what we're planning £350 into the pockets of the poorest people in the area who are most likely to spend it in local shops is part of an economic stimulus. Stuart, do you want to come back in the challenge around the 170,000 and whether it's a good use of money or not?
Through you, Convener, clearly the guiding principles which were issued by COSLA and indeed the information which was presented by Scottish Government is about creating economic stimulus. We believe that the correct way of dealing with that is to offer a continuation of the free parking that's been throughout the COVID period, in order that the town centres, which are most vulnerable in terms of recovery, are supported as much as we possibly can. And by providing free parking for anyone who comes to the town centre, we see that as an opportunity to support that.
Okay, thanks for that. Alan, you want to come back in?
Thank you. I was picking up the first point that Councillor Wilson made. regarding the council's approach to the budget, and obviously the elected members can make the points as well. But it's just to remind members that we did use £4 million worth of reserves to keep council tax down, and the people in receipt of CTR did not benefit from that. And some individuals would have benefited by at least the £350 by council tax being kept down. So you know, the budget from an officer perspective has tried to take account of both sets, both those who pay council tax and would had the increase levied on them, and those who do not pay council tax increase or do not pay council tax at all. Hope that helps.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any other member that's not been in want to come in? No. Okay, so I'll move the recommendations in the report. Have you got an amendment, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, my amendment would be is that the 170,000 towards free parking is used for economic regeneration, primarily for the creation of modern apprentices.
Okay. Any other amendments? No. Okay. Ian, are you going to take this?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for that, convener. So we've got the motion by Councillor McCabe and the amendment by Councillor Wilson. So I'll just go through the roll call vote, councillors.
Can the amendment be repeated, please?
Yes, if you'd like me to do that, convener. So what Councillor Wilson was proposing is that at 3.3 of the recommendations, the 170,000, rather than it being used for free parking, it's used for economic regeneration and primarily for the creation of modern apprentices. Is that correct, Councillor Wilson?
Correct. Thank you, Ian.
Is that okay, Councillor McElhenney? Okay.
Yes, I've got that. Thanks, Mr. Stratton.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go to the vote then. So motion or amendment, Councillor Alfeld?
Motion.
Councillor Clougherty?
Motion.
Councillor McCabe?
Motion.
Councillor McElhenney?
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson?
Motion.
And Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
So the motion is carried by 4 votes to 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, colleagues. So moving on to item 3, DEC appeal, humanitarian aid for Ukraine. And again, Alan, you want to speak to this?
Thank you, convener. Over the last 10 to 15 years, the council has given 2 appeals from Oxfam and the DEC on a large number of occasions. The proposal in this report is to seek subcommittee approval for the council to give £20,000 to support the work of the DEC with the growing humanitarian crisis arising from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm proposing, that the funding comes from the free reserves because the council no longer has a contingency fund, which is what it's previously used for these matters. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Elizabeth, you want to come in?
Thanks for bringing me in. I'm very happy with this. I'm happy with that we're putting forward. Obviously, I think we would love to give an unending amount of money, but we obviously can't do that. In addition to doing this, I'm wondering if it might be possible that we make arrangements for representation to go to the Home Office or whoever else is most relevant to correspond with, to request movement on the delays in current processes for allowing people to come here, to come to the UK from Ukraine. When we look at the numbers that are coming from the Ukraine to Ireland, 50,000 people, Poland are taking over 1 million. And I think yesterday it was about 750 people who had been processed to come to, I hate even the word processed, but to come to the UK. And it just seems that the process is delayed, it is non-transparent. We're not even advertising properly where people can go to the UK processing centre. And I just think if we're giving money, then another thing that we can give is very much our support for the request for people to be freed up process-wise to get into our country if they need to.
Okay, I mean, I don't have any difficulty. I'm more than happy to write on behalf of the council if it's the will of the committee. I'll maybe bring Alan Stevenson in, Alan, to maybe give us any insight into discussions that are maybe taking place at a national level on how we potentially might support Ukrainian refugees.
Convener, thanks. Through yourself, we've just reached out to get any updates at this point. The New Scots team have not had any correspondence in relation to direct information requests. So when that becomes available, I will be able to update members further. But at this point, I don't have any information to share.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Okay, Chris, Councillor McElhenney, you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Convener. Wholeheartedly support the council playing its part to try and get financial aid to people that need it. Just wanted to make a comment in reference to 4.1. So 4.1 lists over the last 5 years, I think, going back to the Ebola appeal, contributions we've made. It's maybe just a general observation that it would be maybe good annually if there could be some sort of report on, you know, what is the current situation in these places, because if you look at the likes of Afghanistan, which, you know, there's no TV cameras there anymore, so it's not on the news, but there's currently 2 million children on the verge of dying of starvation in Afghanistan because, you know, the assets, the country and the banking continues to be frozen. And obviously these situations have been sensitive because it's never a case of playing, you know, one humanitarian need against the other. But I mean, in the case of Afghanistan, in raw numbers terms, you know, there are millions of children in continually in need of support. So I just wonder if it would be useful, you know, maybe some sort of wider report in the future, because, you know, I pick up at, you know, regularly at full council meetings complaints about the Fair Trade Group doesn't meet often enough. The leader himself spoken about, you know, what form of repatriations can we as a council put in place to reflect, you know, money that came to this area. And I just maybe think medium term, perhaps, you know, instead of these items, like whether it's a letter comes to the leader and he refers it to P&R, perhaps if there, you know, should be some sort of committee of members that, you know, have an interest in humanitarian issues, and we should, because if you look at the, you know, the 2010 10,000s that all add up, perhaps we should maybe medium term consider a pot of money that members actually look to see if, you know, there are emerging needs that we think our community would be happy to support. You know, but I know perhaps, I don't know if there's an audit issue there. You know, does there come a point that Audit Scotland would say you're donating too much money to charity? I guess that's pretty grey, but I just think there is, you know, there are issues that come and go, and for example, politicians, the big priority they all want now is to get as many refugees from Calais into the UK as possible from the Ukraine, but at Calais there's still tens of thousands of Afghanistani refugees, there's still tens of thousands of Syrian refugees, and they now seem to have went down the queue because, you know, Prime Minister's questions makes Ukraine the burning issue, but, you know, it seems that other issues then slip off the agenda, and in 6 months' time, maybe Ukraine will slip off the agenda, but there'll still be a lot of humanitarian support needed. And I know we're just a tiny cog in this, but wonder if it would be possible, maybe at least annually, to just get a report on where we've donated money to, what the ongoing situations are, and maybe members would want to, you know, look at what resources we've got, and if that then does make the case, perhaps it does have synergy with the point the leader made before about repatriations of, you know, do we have resources that, you know, we live in a pretty developed society thanks to these resources over hundreds of years. You know, is there a more regular, you know, the government, the UK government, you know, is it 1.7% or so, maybe 0.7% actually, you know, of its budget it donates a year to international aid, which, you know, would be far too significant a figure, I think, for our budget. But, you know, perhaps we should just have a regular budget that, you know, members can look to see whether it's, you know, domestically or internationally, where it can be assigned to for humanitarian purposes.
I mean, I think in terms of the budget Alan's outlined in the report, that's part of the next budget setting process. Members can consider setting up a contingency reserve that we had in the past, which is what we used for these appeals in the past. And I certainly know in terms of a number of them, we've had follow-up information from the DEC, or more specifically Oxfam, in terms of how our money's being used. And with regard to Afghanistan, I mean, we're actually still obviously supporting people who've come from Afghanistan or coming from Afghanistan. It might be worthwhile, again, Alan could give us a wee update on that and where we are with settling people who have come from Afghanistan. And then I'll bring the other Alan in.
Convener, thank you. Yeah, the New Scots team are actively involved, and we are committed to supporting up to 28 families, as you know, and we work with the national organisation through the Home Office to make sure the people that come with their families are offered suitable accommodation. So the Young Scot team meet on a regular basis and they link with the key partners around that, and that's very active at the moment. And as I said earlier, that team will also, if a request comes in relation to the latest crisis around Ukraine, then that team would also be involved in looking to match up people with appropriate housing moving forward. So it's still a very active situation, and we work with the Home Office to make sure we get these matches matched up appropriately to the available housing stock that we've got.
Okay, thanks. Alan Buchan.
Thank you. Just pulling together two of the points that Councillor McElhenney made there. It is a grey area regarding the flexibility that councils have to give to appeals which relate to events out with the UK. The council has been comfortable with its approach, and you can see from the list that it has done. It is, you know, in the greater scheme of things, they're relatively small sums of money in the overall budget, but Ian and I are both aware that there are concerns that potentially could be raised. So therefore, setting aside a specific budget for a specific purpose would potentially lead to more questions in that regard. However, that leads us then to, when we make the donation, we absolutely will correspond with DEC, and you'll remember Hugh Owens, who came to the council meeting not so long ago. Well, it'll be Hugh who we would write to, and I'm more than happy to ensure that we get an update, in particularly in Afghanistan, but maybe a couple of the other schemes that the appeals that we've given, and we can come back to either share it just through a general update to elected members if Hugh writes back or Oxfam writes back. But I'm more than happy to do that. But I realise, you know, I can understand the desire of elected members, whether it's Ukraine, Afghanistan, Yemen, being the more recent ones, wanted to do something, but there are also rules around what council tax and government grant can be used for, and we've just got to be careful that we don't step the wrong side of the line.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Ursula Wilson, David, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I am totally in favour of this donation. I think it's the right thing to do. I must say I was very disappointed and surprised at Councillor Robertson's comment about the refugee situation down south. I think the UK government can hold its head up high with the whole of the Ukrainian situation. This is all about Putin and Russian aggression. The UK has supplied more anti-tank weapons, more handheld anti-plane weapons than any other country to the Ukrainians to help them in the fight. They're already holding up columns of tanks because they've got these weapons. We've also led the way in sanctions, been to the very front of it. In terms of handling refugees, our record with Afghanistan, and more recently with those in Hong Kong who've suffered under different regimes, has been quite excellent. A lot of work's going in to assist the refugees to come across the channel and get into the UK, but we do have a visa system which is there by law. It might have, perhaps could have been a wee bit quicker, but in terms of our overall contribution to this war and our aid to make it happen, I think our position as a UK has been really quite good. Thank you, Convener.
Okay. Ronnie, Councillor Alfield, do you want to come in?
Just a comment. Thanks, Stephen. Just a comment from me. I think that locally the initiatives to support the people in Ukraine has, I guess, as usual, been absolutely outstanding. And I would just like to commend the folks at Wildfire Deli in Kempart Street in Gourock, who yesterday donated all of the takings to the fund. So it's a massive thank you and shout out to Alec McGilp and his family for a wonderful effort yesterday, and it was very, very well supported by the local community. So well done to everyone involved. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I would endorse that, and obviously the other efforts that have been made by other local groups as well to support this effort for Ukraine. Anybody else want to come in? I don't know if Councillor Robertson, you want to come back in again?
If that's okay, yeah. It's very straightforward for me. You know, if we were in a situation like the people in Ukraine, I would want people to open their borders to us, to support us, and the process is very tricky. Everything, every single piece of paper, every single document that a person produces from Ukraine to be able to come here at present, because things haven't been made that. These are tricky, complex documents, and I just think we can show a little bit more compassion. I understand, and I actually agree with Councillor Major. I think you're right, Councillor Wilson, there are other things that we're doing well, but I think this is another one that's very direct to keep people safe that we can do. I go back again, I'm just going to re-emphasise the point. If we were in a similar situation, I would want open doors rather than bureaucratic red tape to be there for me, my family, you, your family.
Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else want to come in? Okay, I think we're all unanimously agreed on the donation, and obviously Councillor Robertson suggested that the council, could be myself, could be the chief executive, although she's currently on holiday. I'm quite happy to write to the Home Secretary, just encouraging the government to take a more generous approach to support refugees from Ukraine. Councillor Wilson, you don't seem particularly keen on that idea. You're on mute, Councillor Wilson.
Here I am. No, I violently disagree with that. I don't think it's our place as a council to be doing that. Let's see what happens over the next week or two when they try and sort things out. But come on, let's look at our efforts there in the round. I think it makes us look a wee bit petty to go on about that and not also recognise what's been done by the UK financially and in the terms of weapons and in terms of sanctions to fight this guy. I don't hear anything against Putin and what he's doing. I hear people having a go at the UK government, a Conservative government in London, which is what I think Elizabeth Robertson was doing.
No, to be fair, Councillor Wilson, at the last full council meeting, we did agree that the province would write to the Russian ambassador to make representations asking for a withdrawal of the Russians from the Ukraine. And I'm more than happy in any letter we send to acknowledge the work that the UK government is doing to support the people of Ukraine. But there is a humanitarian crisis here, as people have said, on a scale not seen in Europe since the Second World War. And a country of 44 million people has been torn apart in front of our very eyes. And we, as a nation of 65, 66 million people, are capable of taking more than a few hundred refugees at this point in time. So I certainly don't have an issue with making representation on that. I'd hope we don't need to go to a vote on it, but if we have to...
I have a major issue because you're just homing in on the one point. And this isn't, that's good, that's bad. This isn't one against another. It's all bad. Well, you need to look at what we're doing in the absolute round. I think it's not a good look for Inverclyde Council to be picking on this. It looks as though it's very, very anti the UK government and anti the Conservative government.
Well, certainly from my perspective it isn't, but I bring Councillor McAlery in who wants to come in, then Councillor Robertson wants to come back in.
Thanks, convener. Like you, I would be disappointed if we had to have a vote on this, because I think, there's there's a unanimous support for, you know, putting the financial support from the council on behalf of the people in Inverclyde to Ukraine. And in terms of a letter, you know, I think, you know, I don't want this to get into, you know, politics, but there is the issue, you know, what you had made the point the other week that you thought the council writing to the First Minister about a matter in this constituency, you know, was futile in regard to Ferguson's, that was. So I just wonder, you know, if we, you know, we're on the risk here of losing sight of what this report was for. I mean, for example, you know, the UK Parliament, the Labour Party still wants biometric and security checks prior to visas being issued. So that's, you know, the main opposition's position, and the UK government's position is what it is. So, you know, I do think it would be, you know, to an extent tokenistic, and which is of course important sometimes in times of human tragedy. But I think that I would be content if, you know, we just settled on the fact that we're making a donation that hopefully will make a difference, and we get unanimous support for that. And as I say, I'd be disappointed if it went to a vote on a letter, and I would just ask you if you could find a way that, you know, I'd be able to show my support for the financial donation, but I would also be able to abstain on whether or not a letter sent.
Okay, and just to be clear, that whatever the UK Labour Party adopts in Westminster doesn't sort of prevent me from taking a different perspective, different view, but that's by the by. Councillor Robertson, it was your original suggestion. You want to come in?
It was my original suggestion, and I do stick by it because I've made the point of you know, I would like people to behave in a humanitarianly compassionate way to us if we were in a similar position. So I'll re-emphasise that. I'm going to ask Councillor Wilson if he would perhaps accept that by me not including any of the other measures in the request of the letter, that I do agree that these things are being done at a sufficient level, and this is perhaps just the one level where I think we could do more, and that by not giving a shopping list of things that I want in the letter, that I think other measures are being done well.
I just, Elizabeth, I just don't think the letter is necessary. I agree with Councillor McElhenney. We've agreed the donation. I think you could look at it in 2 weeks' time and you're in a totally different situation. There are rules around a visa, and it's been agreed by the whole of the UK Parliament that these are the rules. And it involves biometric stuff, it involves passports, it involves all sorts of stuff. And you're dealing here with the Home Office, where you have some pretty dreadful civil servants who just simply love procedure and actually don't have a great record of doing things quickly. But they've been given these rules and regulations by Parliament, and they're following it. And my goodness, they're following it to the letter.
Okay, thanks for that further contribution, Councillor Wilson. So I think, Ian, we are agreed in the donation, okay? And it probably would be up to Councillor Robertson to formulate an additional recommendation that clearly would have to go to a vote.
Shall I, Councillor? Yes, so I was taking it that 3.1 unanimously agreed, and then it was a motion by Councillor Robertson that yourself, convener, write to the Home Secretary to make a representation over the delays in connection with the visa or other sort of process in connection with refugees coming into the UK. And I think Councillor Wilson was proposing the direct negative in respect of that letter being sent.
I agree, Mr. Strachan.
Yeah. Okay, so, Councillor Robertson.
Can you just ask Councillor Robertson, you happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Right, Ian. Proceed.
Okay. Thank you, convener. So we got the motion by Councillor Robertson, councillors, and then the direct negative amendment by Councillor Wilson. So Councillor Alfeld, motion or amendment?
Abstain.
Councillor Clougherty.
Motion.
Councillor McCabe.
Motion.
Councillor McElhenney.
Abstain.
Councillor Robertson.
Motion.
And Councillor Wilson.
Amendment. Oh, it's a Labour SNP get together, is it? Eh?
So the motion is carried by 3 votes to 1 and 2 not
Suddenly
voting.
politics has come into policy and resources, and Labour and SNP get together.
Now, Councillor Wilson, you know you're not allowed to just interject in the middle of a vote and make political statements. You know that's not really formed for an esteemed deputy provost of many years. And I mean, I could have noted the Alba Tory coalition in the last vote we had, but such is life. Okay, thank you.
Point of order, there is no Alba Tory coalition. There was, of course, a Labour Tory coalition between 2012 and 17 and an informal arrangement over the course of this council.
No, there's never been a Tory Labour coalition. There's never been. You need to check your historical facts. The only time Labour's been in coalition is with Councillor Alfield and Councillor George White. That's the only, and he was a Liberal, not a Liberal Democrat, a Liberal.
Oh.
So we've never had a formal
That
coalition.
was Ronnie and me.
Oh, that's
No,
always
no,
happens, Councillor
Look at the
Wilson.
document.
Run up to the election, Councillor Wilson, you always get thrown under the bus. But don't worry,
Absolutely.
They'll be back at the statutory meeting for you.
No, here we are. The meeting's actually finished, colleagues. But if we all want to stay on and have a wee political chat, we could do.